afternoon, and welcome to our first in 3 series of a diabetic, we can call it a reversal program, right? A natural approach to diabetes, to conquering diabetes. Before we start, we will offer a word of prayer to ask God to be in our midst and to guide our direction today. Eternal God and our Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this another beautiful day and all the opportunities that lie therein. We thank you for the wisdom and understanding that you have given us so that we can help your people to alleviate some of the dis-ease that is certainly not a part of your kingdom. We thank you, Heavenly Father, and we ask that your Holy Spirit will be here with us to bless your people and to guide our discussion. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So diabetes is one of those diseases that is a nutritional problem which requires a nutritional fix. And I hope that this presentation, this seminar will be interactive, right? It is for you. It is for those who want a full understanding of how to conquer this dreaded disease. Every 10 to 15 seconds, someone in this country dies from diabetic complications. So, even though heart disease is the #1 killer, diabetes is a predictor, a very high probability predictor of heart trouble, right? So diabetes is possibly the leading cause of heart disease in this country. The very approach that Western medicine takes to diabetes is one that doesn't offer a reversal or a fix. It offers only management. But more and more we see, in fact, the CDC now is embarking on a program to help persons to understand diabetes and what they can do to manage diabetes. But the good thing is that some of the things that involve in that management are some of the same things that will be involved in reversing diabetes. So, what is diabetes? Today we will understand diabetes because you have people with the condition who don't understand what is happening to their bodies. And it is because of the lack of understanding why folks cannot help themselves. So if you're engrossed in a battle, you have to understand the enemy's artillery, what they are doing, what they are up to, in order to counteract him, right? And that's what we're going to be doing. So in this seminar, we will also be talking about the connection of dairy to diabetes, caffeine to diabetes, right? We look at the impact of the hybridized wheat on our system, our constitution. And hybridized wheat has a higher glycemic index than even the crystalline acid called sugar. But most people don't know that. So when you take the flour that is from the hybridized wheat, you are putting a higher acid load on your body than sugar. So the hybridized wheat is the wheat that has been genetically modified. That is pretty much in almost everything that we eat from the processed food, right? So it's a very, very serious onslaught on the constitution of man. But what it does, it enriches the farmers significantly because it produces a yield of more than 10 times what the ancient wheat like spelt and amaranth and these other ancient grains produce on the body. So it is a disorder of carbohydrate metabolism in which the pancreas can no longer produce the insulin, or the insulin produced by the pancreas is rejected by the cells. Now, how the body works, the body requires oxygen and glucose for energy and metabolism, right? Oxygen and glucose. Now, the glucose carrier into the cell is the hormone insulin. So when you eat your starchy food, there are special chemical actions that breaks out the glucose into the intestines, and that crosses what is called the mucous membrane of the intestinal wall into our bloodstream. Now, when the blood reaches the pancreas senses how much sugar or glucose is entered into the blood. It's a very powerful system. And then it generates by its beta cells the insulin that the body needs to reduce that sugar level. Now, if sugar stays too high in your bloodstream, you're in for a coma, right? And if it stays too high, the brain is starved. And the brain will send signals to the body if it cannot get the glucose that it needs to either you're hungry, you want something sweet, or it will send signals to break down fat or protein for its energy. And that is even worse news than the sugar in the bloodstream, because that leads to a condition called ketoacidosis, which means you are now very toxic and you're running the risk of a heart attack or a stroke, right? So these are some things that we need to understand about diabetes and why it is important to take the steps to fix it. Insulin, the synthetic insulin that is given to the diabetic, the body gets used to it within 6 months. That's based on what researchers are saying. And it is one of the reasons why those people who can afford it are now going back to the insulin produced, the natural insulin produced from the livers of cows and pigs, right? Because it has a better efficacy on the body, right? That is bad news for the Adventists with diabetes, right? Because you don't want the pigs' insulin, right? We certainly don't want that one. But insulin is what I call a bad boy hormone, because insulin being too high in the bloodstream causes rupture and damage to the blood vessel walls. Now, imagine a situation where you have a high animal protein diet and you are having ruptures in your blood vessel lining. The liver produces all the cholesterol that the body needs, but by eating the animal protein, you're adding more and more cholesterol to the body. That cholesterol is a good hormone. It tries to repair the blood vessel lining, so it continuously tries to cover the damage that is taking place. But when it's overworking, when it's too much in the blood, it covers too much, so the blood vessel that should have this space crunches to this. And then you have blood pressure problems, you have heart problems, atherosclerosis, and these other damages that takes place just by the diet, right? So here is how the risk of a stroke or a heart attack increases significantly in the diabetic, right? The accumulation of the sugar leads to its appearance in the blood and the urine, right? The cells are sending signals to the body and to the insulin that, hey, I'm sick of the sight of you, because there's too much insulin for too long in the bloodstream, right? Symptoms of diabetes are frequent urination, excessive thirst, weight loss, and frequent urination, and regularly feeling hungry, right? It causes serious health complications, including renal failure. And it is quite interesting that the medical doctors are now the owners of the dialysis centers that are popping up all around the country, because they know that the treatment that is given for diabetics will lead you to kidney failure, high risk of kidney failure, and when you're on dialysis, it's hard to come off. because the nephrons in the kidneys, these little microscopic filters, right, which should not be able to filter proteins, but it can filter sugars and other minerals. But the protein molecule is bigger than the sugar molecule, bigger than the nephrons, right, which are the microscopic filters. It shouldn't be able to filter them, but when you start seeing proteins in the urine, that's the first sign of kidney degeneration. So when your albumin reading is higher than the reference reading, that indicates that you're having kidney degeneration, right? We would do well to protect our kidneys, right? Yes. No, I said once you started dialysis, it's hard to get off of it. You have to be very, very strict because the kidney, unlike the liver regenerates itself and it's the organ that can quickly regenerate itself. But the person with a kidney damage is in a worse condition than the person with a liver damage. So if they have 2 kidneys that are damaged, what's the question? So if one kidney is damaged, the other one is fine. The other one will be under stress once the other one is weakened. And they wouldn't need it until that kidney is not performing above 30%. So once it drops below about 30% of efficiency, then they would be considering dialysis. But is dialysis and is drug therapy the only option for the diabetic? Well, the uninformed diabetic, yes. But the informed diabetic, no. I've seen diabetes reversed by just exercise. I've seen diabetes reversed by just getting adequate sunlight. I've seen diabetes reversed by a nutrient therapy. My mother, about 2010, were facing severe diabetes and hypertensive complications. And at this time, I was a telecom professional, but mother needed help. And she was told she had about 11 courses of drugs multiple times per day, always have an emergency episode at least once per month. I had to leave work and head to the hospital because my mother was there. This was 2010. I called my friend, who was my fishing partner. He's a physician, experienced one, and I presented the little box of drugs to him and said, which one of these can be pulled back? Because every time she goes to see her attending physician, he keeps adding more drugs and she's having more fall-down episodes. And she is despondent, she can hardly talk, she can hardly respond. And my friend protected his industry, naturally. That's what feeds him. And I said to him, okay, I'm a young telecom executive. If I get a case to look at once or twice, I cannot go back to my senior management who employs me and tells me that I don't know what the fix is. So I said, you guys are fired. But it was a drastic step. But I'm just telling you this to show you that diabetes can be reversed. And I started researching. Mother needed help. I learned to do research from my university years. And I applied certain specific nutrients, the B complex, the vitamin E, to start repairing the blood vessel lining, and vitamin C in high dosage, and adjustments to her diet and lifestyle. Mother was more obedient to her son than her 2 doctors. And for that, it's 9 years that mother has not taken another drug for neither diabetes nor hypertension. And mother is healthy, have never been to the hospital in 9 years for an emergency, right? Of course, a lot of prayer went up also to start. Because I didn't know nothing about medicine. I was just taking a risk because mother needed help. And to God be the glory, it worked. And that spurred my interest in natural medicine. And around 2015, I enrolled in the International Institute of Original Medicine for a doctorate in naturopathy. And 4.5 years after, I've completed. It's a completely different transition from computer science, operations management, and international business. And it puzzles some of my friends how I could make such a step. But when God calls you to help others, and you learn that only what's done for Christ will last, you have to make that move, or else you will become an enemy of God. Right? So let's get back into diabetes. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the US, after cancer. No, cancer comes second. Heart disease is first. Diabetes is about 8th or 9th place. But the complications of diabetes could be triggering that increase in heart disease death each year. America, as I said yesterday, has the unenviable record of leading in every disease category except hip fractures and osteoporosis, where Sweden, Denmark, the Scandinavian countries that produce milk and dairy, they are leading in that sphere. And your antennas should go up because you should ask, how come the dairy-producing countries have the highest incidence of osteoporosis and hip fractures? We will talk about that in the next seminar. Yeah. Ketoacidosis. So when the body breaks down fat and protein for energy, that chemical from the fat breakdown, if that remains in the bloodstream, the body needs to clean the bloodstream, right? So if sugar is being oxidized in the bloodstream and cannot be extracted because insulin production is low or insulin resistance is high, then you have a very toxic load, and the body is now trying to use, instead of its natural fuel glucose, it's trying to use fat and protein, which comes in with more acids, more chemicals, right? And that resides in the bloodstream, so you can go into a coma, right? So that's about what it is. It's the attempt for the body to break down fat and protein for energy because it is being starved for sugar. Well, the liver is one organ that can break down fat for energy, but the brain, in this case, in the case of ketoacidosis, it is the brain that is being starved for glucose. The brain cannot break down fat for energy. So because the brain is being starved, this brain, which is 3 pounds, uses 20% of the energy in the blood at any one time. But when you are resistant to insulin, the energy of the glucose is not being absorbed into the cell. So the brain is starved. The brain will not be left starving. It is the mainframe, right? It will send signals to get whatever it wants. But the signals sent to break down fat and proteins is not a good one for you because there's too much oxidation taking place in the bloodstream. That's bad news, right? Painful neuropathy, foot pain, pains all over the body. It's one area where I see people all the time seeking help and relief, crying because they cannot find that relief. And I understand, I've never felt systemic pain or pain in any area for even a day at a time, much more to have it for weeks and months. And this is what happens in painful neuropathy, right? And especially in the legs. And there's almost no relief offered once the body gets used to the regular drugs given for it. Because what is happening is a damaging of the blood vessel lining, right? What is happening is the reduction of oxygen in the blood because there's so much oxidation taking place, right? So without oxygen, which is the life giver according to Doc's presentation yesterday, but in chemistry it is called the life giver. When oxygen is low in the blood, you're running into serious trouble, right? Pains all over the body. You could have fatigue, depression, different mental conditions because there is a lack of oxygen. And the damage in the blood vessels starts primarily in the legs. The sciatic nerve also, people have sciatica, which can be triggered by the damage by insulin action over time to the blood vessel lining, right? Blindness. The number one cause of blindness in America is diabetes. The number one cause of blindness. Because again, the small capillaries in the eye are damaged by the action of insulin, the rigid action of insulin. So the problem is not really the glucose, but insulin. Insulin does the damage. Now, there is a concept called hyperglycemia, which is when there's too much sugar in the blood, and insulin is generated, takes out the sugar, you feel lethargic, you eat something sweet again or some simple starch, and then you're on a roller coaster ride with your sugar index. And that action is what leads the body to become insulin resistant. Because insulin, after your blood sugar falls, will reside in the blood at about 30 times the amount that it's needed. So it will reside in the blood and it will be very high. But you want that insulin to be lowered, right? Now, what that insulin will be doing is reducing the blood sugar, the glucose, which is now necessary for the brain to function. So that hyperglycemia is what triggers that insulin resistance, right? So, the road to type 2 diabetes, and this is taken from the CDC's website. And unfortunately, in today's Western medicine approach, you go up to red and you can never get back a green light. You start at green, and then you go up to red, and you never get back the green light. So let's look at it. Normal, when your A1C test, which is a blood sugar test, a hemoglobin test, is below 5.7%, or 5.7% or below. When you're pre-diabetes, you are 5.7 to 6.4%. And diabetes sets in when you are 6.5% or above. Your fasting blood sugar test, normal range is 99 milligrams per deciliter or below. Prediabetes, 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter. You'll see these, when you do a blood test, you will have your reference range and the normal range, right? And fasting blood sugar is 126. Well, when you're diabetic, your fasting blood sugar, which means this is your blood sugar level when you haven't eaten anything, right, is 126 milligram per deciliter or above. Your glucose tolerance test, when you're diabetic, when you're 200 milligram per deciliter or above. Here are some statistics. Yes, Doc. Say that again. Insulin. Yes. So Before you reach the insulin, unless you are type 1, which means you're insulin dependent, which means you have to learn how to either use the patch or inject yourself from your, you have to learn this from your physician, how to apply that insulin, how to put that insulin in. If you're not, that is type 1 diabetes. If you're type 2 diabetes, you are not insulin dependent, but without effective control of your diabetes, you are on the path to becoming insulin dependent. So you will start off with metformin or these other type of drugs. There are other types that is, but metformin is one of the most popular. Unfortunately, research is showing that metformin has a damaging effect on the kidneys and also the liver. But the type 1 diabetic, his pancreas is, the beta cells are tired, they're lazy, they cannot produce the insulin needed to reduce your blood sugar level. In the type 2, insulin is being produced, maybe not at the effective level, or the insulin produced is not effectively utilized by the cell, or both. That's the type 2. So we will discuss how to regenerate your pancreas, what foods you can incorporate, right? What herbs you can incorporate, what nutrient you can incorporate. Because when the body gets sick, in fact, it's a good time to segue into something here. There are 6 primary reasons why the body says, I want food. And the very first reason is its need for glucose. It's the natural fuel of the body. Your car is made of iron, but the natural fuel is gasoline, not iron, right? Our structure is made of protein, but the natural fuel is not protein. It's glucose. In fact, we need far less protein than we consume. We need probably just about 3.5 ounces of protein, which is a chicken leg or less per day. And God is so merciful that He didn't leave it to us to give the body all the protein needs that it requires. The body, we have to only supply 33% of the amino acids needed to build that protein chain to repair our cells and tissues. But we give the body far more than it needs. And what happens in that case, we're acidic and we have ammonia buildup in the system. We have all these toxic chemicals built up and the kidneys are under stress. And when the kidneys are under stress, it sends a message to the brain, and brain says, release some either potassium or release some calcium from the bones. And then when the kidneys cannot filter the calcium from the bone, the calcium that is now in the bloodstream, you have gout and you have arthritis, you have hardening of the arteries, you have all kind of problems, right? And that's when we eat too much protein. So the second need of the body when it says, I want food, is amino acids, because these are the protein building blocks. So we only have to supply 30% of the body's amino acid needs. God already designed the body to supply the next 66, right? So these protein building blocks are called essential amino acids, right? Only about 8 or 9 of them. The third reason why the body says, I want food, is for fatty acids. And these are the key to brain building, right? Half the weight of our brain is made of fatty acids, right? And this keeps the brain healthy and functioning, right? And it's also protective. The fourth reason why the body says, I want food, is for enzymes. Enzymes are the construction workers. If you can afford to build a house and you buy all the finest materials and you put them on the work site, as we do with our food today, and the workers do not turn up, who's going to build the house? And that's what is happening with food processing and in America. There is an onslaught on enzyme, which is a special type of protein that does the work to bring the nutrients or help the liver in the digestion process. right? So our liver is constantly taxed because we're putting food in without raw food, which contains the enzymes. We cook everything, and we use salt to process everything, and we destroy and damage the enzyme. So the construction worker does not go in, and the liver is taxed to design the enzyme to digest your food. Over time, the liver gets tired. Over time, it gets sluggish. And one of the things I've learned in my research is that a sluggish liver can never metabolize drugs. Do you know what that means? It means many, many people are taking drugs which have zero effect on their body. And the placebo effect, which is taking none, would have a better effect on the body than taking the drugs, because the inorganic compounds of the drugs will accumulate in the liver tissue because it cannot effectively metabolize those drugs. For example, baby aspirin is only useful to 33% of the people who take them. But baby aspirin is so, there are millions of tons of aspirin that is used in this country each year. And many people suffer the stomach disorders, the disruption of the good bacteria, which is a major part of our immune system, because they're using these toxic chemicals. So we would better be wise and better go back to basics. The old cures still work. We have gotten so modern today that we are willing to go and pay $20 for health care. And we get something from a modern office that is poisoning the body. Instead of some of the things that we have learned from mother or grandmother, we have abandoned them. We should go back to them. We should go back to detox and cleansing, don't it? We should go back to colon cleansing. We should go back to the simple exercise. We should clean the house instead of buying a robot to do the cleaning. So that movement and that exercise is very good for the body. We were made to move, right? The fifth reason why the body says, I want food, is for vitamins and minerals. There are over 4,000 biochemical responses in the body, reactions that take place that are only triggered by vitamins and minerals. So, if you're deficient in one vitamin or one mineral, that could lead to many different diseases. So, if I have heart disease, I will quickly go and get my vitamin E and my selenium before I go and get a statin drugs or a heart disease drugs. And I'll see the effect first, depending on the severity of the heart disease. When you're deficient in vitamin E, as an example, what are some of the issues that you can have? High blood pressure, heart disease, infertility, right? Beriberi, one of those old ancient diseases that I think has been almost eradicated. What are some of the other conditions? You can have damage to the blood vessel lining, because vitamin E is your resident antioxidant that repairs your blood vessels. The diabetic will do very well at ensuring that vitamin E is in their diet. Rich sources also. So the omega-3s, like the flaxseed oil, they are rich in vitamin E, but your richest natural source, your richest, cheapest source is like the sunflower seeds. Sunflower seeds. All nuts, all seeds are good vitamin E profile. But the champions are sunflower, walnuts, and there are a couple of others, right? Your fish oil is good also. In fact, your cod liver oil is very good. It's rich in vitamin D and vitamin A. And nowadays, medical doctors are prescribing vitamin D in its pure form, which is a very good booster for those who need the vitamin D. But it should not be used for the long term, because research is showing that the vitamin D in its pure form, if taken for long term, will lead to hypercalcification, which means there's a lot of calcium in the blood. And when there's a lot of calcium in the blood, what did we say earlier? You have gout, you have kidney stones, you have different pains, you have heart problems. It also leads to a loss of magnesium in the heart. Magnesium, the great relaxer, is needed to contract the heart, right? For contraction. And it also is needed for relaxing the muscle and tension in the body, right? So vitamin D in its pure form over long term, and long term is over a month or two, right? So you'd better be using your cod liver oil or your pumpkin seeds or your pumpkin seed oil. These are better sources of vitamin D. Vitamin D doesn't exist in nature without vitamin A. And vitamin A is also important for the diabetic because it resides in the liver. And in diabetes, vitamin A appears to be deficient in the liver. So, as I said earlier at the start, diabetes is a dietary problem that requires a dietary fix. The body designed, the Lord designed this body to repair itself. It's your immune system that has kept you alive and get you over all the colds and all the bacteria, all the viruses that sometimes you are not aware of because there's a great war that takes place at the cellular level. All we have to do, according to Ellen White, is give the body the ammunition that it needs, and the body will make the corrections. The physician is only the catalyst between you and God, your creator. And the physician sometimes only sends the bill. So pure vitamin D is when you get this oily liquid, or you get, you are prescribed a soft gel pill by your doctor. Yes. It is the pure form. Because vitamin D exists in nature along with vitamin A. When it's purified, it doesn't have the vitamin A compounds. And then that is where your problem is. Because vitamin A acts like a buffer. And they have to be in the similar ratio. And that's what you get in your cod liver oil. If you're a vegetarian, your pumpkin seed oil or your pumpkin seeds and your flax seeds are pure vitamin D is not good. Exactly. It's better to get it from your natural sources. Yes, because in nature, it exists along with a similar ratio of vitamin A. Sunshine does, and in fact, that's the best place to get it. But one of the things that we find in this industrialized era is that we go out to work before the sun is up, and we look at the sunlight outside through the window, and then we go back home when it's dark. We get none. We see it, but we get none. So vitamin D helps with calcium absorption in the body. So yes, vitamin D with calcium, it will help with the absorption. One of the things I've learned, though, is that the inorganic calcium is also bad on the heart. So you'd want to get your calcium from natural sources. The inorganic calcium leads to myocardium infarction. That's heart attack. So when for example, if you're feeling a heartburn, which many diabetics always have heartburn, right? You shouldn't be using Tums or these inorganic calcium cocktails. You should go for your lemon juice, or if you can't deal with the lemon juice, you go for your ginger tea or your ginger shot, right? And these are better at helping your digestion. Your garlic supplement, these are better at your digestion than these inorganic calcium. They do work, but the problem is that they give you more calcium than you need, and especially if you're on an animal protein diet, you'll always be breaking down calcium from the bones, right? You'll always be breaking down calcium for the digestion of this acidic substance that you put in your system. And cheese is among the worst. So cheese and milk that should give you calcium, which we know is very rich in calcium, but the absorption of the calcium is very poor. Why is that? And I'm preempting seminar 2. But after we are weaned, we no longer produce the enzyme lactase to digest the sugar in milk, the lactose. We no longer produce the renin to digest the protein casein in milk. And the milk, the protein, is casein. The milk protein is casein. But we no longer produce the enzyme renin to digest it. Now, the calcium in milk is very high, but the ratio of phosphorus to calcium in milk is very low. So if the ratio is too low, if the phosphorus ratio is too low, there will be an inhibition in the digestion of that calcium. So we put the calcium store in, but we cannot digest it. And then we cannot digest the sugar. We cannot digest the protein. And the beta cells in the pancreas, when it sees all of this coming in, it attacks, it creates antibodies that attacks the beta cells and destroys your pancreas. I went too far. I went into seminar 2. But you'll still come and we'll discuss the dairy connection. But you have gotten a synopsis of why, especially the diabetic, should stay away from dairy. This country is blessed with beautiful, delicious alternatives to dairy. God's people better get on board. And we will look at how, probably only my sister here, what's her name? Yes, Mariette, Sister Mariette, alone in this group would probably have a 30 to 40% ability to absorb the casein and the sugar from milk. But all of us, everyone else, Black, Indian, Latinos, we have the lowest absorption rate of these elements. Right? It's just by, I guess it's the luck of the draw. But it's genetic, right? So Caucasians do better digesting, yes. And the European Caucasians do much better than the Americans. But you are doing better than, you would do better than myself, right? And we will see more of that. We will see what the research shows. So 30.3 million people in this country have diabetes. That is about 1 out of every 10 people. Oh, sorry, before I jump there. The 6th reason why our body says I want food is water. The first, glucose; 2nd, amino acids; 3rd, fatty acids; 4th is enzyme; 5th, vitamins and minerals; and 6th is water. So let's go into the statistics. 1 out of 4 people who have diabetes are unaware. So some of our people are time bombs. $84.1 million American adults, which is more than 1 out of 3, have pre-diabetes. And for those who came in a little late, let me just jump back quickly to this screen. That's what pre-diabetes means. I'm not getting a light, but you can see it there. Pre-diabetes, when your blood sugar tests are in the yellow there, 5.7 to 6.4% in your A1C. Your A1C test is a hemoglobin test, a blood test you do every 3 months or so to test what the reading is. Or your fasting blood sugar test, and people with diabetes should learn how to test. Just get a machine. You know, God has blessed us with a lot of modern conveniences, so we can be ahead in our information. 100 to 125 milligram per deciliter, and glucose tolerance test, 140 to 149. So that is what prediabetes mean. 84 million people are there waiting to become diabetic. Because that's all I have to say here. We're waiting to become diabetic. And 9 out of 10 people with prediabetes don't know that they have it. And this is from the CDC's website. So, prediabetes is easy to fix. Exercise fixes it very, very easily. I have a friend, my two best friends, senior professionals. They are both pre-diabetic. They learned they were pre-diabetic about 2 years ago. One decided to attack his pre-diabetes with exercise, going back to play ball and swimming and so forth. The other started on the road to attack it, but went back to the television. He is now diabetic. Last time I was in Jamaica, his mother whispered it to me. He didn't even tell me. And the other one, his medication for prediabetes is being reduced. And he is not having any episodes of dizziness or complication. So he is on the road to recovery because he is taking steps to change. The other one went back to the couch and is now on diabetes drugs. Yes, very good.
But what he says is exercise really does not help much. Actually,
Okay.
as opposed to exercise. Exercise would burn certain calories.
All right. So exercise, we're going into seminar 2. But intermittent fasting is curative on prediabetes and diabetes. And intermittent fasting is only eating for a few hours per day and resting the digestive systems and organs for tops 15 hours. If you can do 18 hours, that's good. So if you can eat 3 or 4 hours in the daytime and eat a healthy diet, you can overcome your diabetes. That's intermittent fasting. What exercise does for you, exercise allows the body to get into the hybrid mode. So it starts burning calories instead of looking for glucose, right? So exercise is very good at dumping the toxins from the body, restoring tone to the digestive organs. And that's very helpful for the diabetic, right? Because the pancreas is one of those. So it restores tone also to the stomach. So exercise is very helpful. Now, I will leave the details of how the body deals with the glucagon, which is the short-term store of the energy in the liver that is released quickly when you need that burst of energy to move, and how it deals with the glucose or how it deals with the calories, which is the store, in fact. But rest assured that exercise has tremendous benefits for the diabetic. Right? I've seen it reversed with just exercise in people. Yeah. So eating healthy and being more active is the key. It's a dietary challenge that requires a dietary fix. If you leave here with nothing, just remember that. It's a dietary challenge requiring a dietary fix. Right? So you can cut your risk of getting type 2 diabetes in half by just adjusting you're eating to a healthier diet and becoming more active. In our youth, researchers are now telling us that our children is the first generation that is not expected to outlive their parents. God gave us our children to teach us how much He loves us, unconditional love. And to hear these kind of statistics and research info coming out, it's disastrous, right? With all of the advance in technology, all of the medical advances, to hear that that will not benefit our children because of the food primarily that they are consuming is disastrous, at least for me. I want my children to bury me. I don't want to have to bury them. So the restraint that my parents put on me, I have to ensure that it is balanced and put back on them too. We shouldn't give them what we didn't get. We should give them what we got. We always say, especially when we grow up from a very humble situation, that I'm giving my children what I didn't get, and we spoil them. We teach them to have one meal all day, every hour per day. So they're always eating, and they're always snacking. Yeah, very terrible. They don't exercise, and we look at that also. So the rates of type 2 diabetes in the youth is increasing. It's over 18% at the moment. 18% of probably 100 million young people in this country. That's significant. That's 18 million young people. And eating more fruits and vegetables would be helpful. Drinking more water and limit sugary drinks and pastries. Over 100 years ago, the average consumption of sugar was 6 pounds per year. Just over 100 years ago. Who can guess and tell me what the average is now? I'll give you 3 chances. Let me hear you. Good guess, 100. Any other? A year. 125 pounds of sugar. It's a very good attempt. 125 pounds of sugar per year. How much sugar do you think the kidneys can cope with in a single day?
60 grams.
It's actually 6 teaspoons. Yes, 6 teaspoons. Now, the average consumption is well over 18 teaspoons a day. So that's about 32, anywhere from 26 to 32 teaspoons of sugar in that 24 to 30 ounces. Yeah. So we will see, in fact, I'll go down and we'll see the impact of food processing and those sugars on the body's immune system. Once you're above 24 teaspoons of sugar in a day, your immune system fighter cells, these trusty workmen that are always on guard to keep us protected, he can, without sugar in a day, destroy 14 bacteria. Once you get to 24 teaspoons in a day, he can only destroy 1. That's more than a 98% crunch in your body's immune system ability to kill bacteria and viruses. All right? Make physical activity fun, and limiting high-calorie foods is very important. So the word from the CDC is to get the whole family involved. So a seminar like this, we should have the children, especially the teens. Because one of the benefits of having the teens hear these seminars by themselves is because they haven't developed as much prejudice as some of us. And their brains are still embryonic, they'll still receive information that will benefit them tremendously, especially when they're going off to college, right? Which is where the alcohol and the excessive simple sugars form a big part of the diet. They go experiment. But if they are armed with information, they will do much better. Right? So we have to take small steps, keep it simple, and we have to make it fun if we're going to overcome some of these challenges. Yes, sister? We can discuss that. We can discuss that with Elder, thank God, and Pastor. Is there a difference between honey and sugar? Well, in Psalm, I think 27 verse 25 or 25 verse 27, the Bible says that it's not good to take much honey. Now, the spirit of prophecy amplifies that by saying that, indicating that the principle was dealing with simple sugars and not necessarily, because honey is a good sweetener, but it still needs to be limited because it has a very high glycemic index, which means it raises the blood sugar quite high. But the pure crystalline acid from the sugar cane is more acidic than honey. So honey is also antimicrobial, so honey is a better sweetener, right? When we are dealing with a cold or any viruses with our children, we cut the onions and the garlic and we pour honey over it, let it sit for 2 hours, and that's their natural elixir. And that's very powerful, right? So honey is not an alkaline sweetener. The alkaline sweeteners are like organic maple syrup and molasses. Molasses is loaded with calcium. Calcium is an alkaline mineral. It's also loaded with potassium, which are alkaline minerals. So that's where molasses gets its alkalinity from, right? So you would want to limit honey also. And if you can, replace it with molasses preferably. Maple syrup is absorbed rapidly also. Even though it's an alkaline sweetener, I would reduce the maple syrup also. Yes, yes, ma'am. So blackstrap molasses, organic sources, are your best bet. Yeah? Yeah. So for type 2 diabetes, and I was hoping that our nutritionist will be here, but the low glycemic fruits, your apples, your bananas, no. Your sweet mangoes, no. Your grapes, no. All right? But your apples and your tart cherry, your more tart fruits, your kiwi, those are good fruits for the diabetic. So out of this seminar, I hope that you will learn the principles and make the choices, because the decisions will be based on what you learn here. So I hope I've answered your question. Yes, okay. So strawberries can get very sweet, but when they're in between, quite tart, you can enjoy them. Is there any benefit to almond milk? So almond is preferred to many other nuts because almond is a very rich profile of nutrients, especially calcium and other minerals also are in almond milk. So you'd want to enjoy your almond milk over your cow's milk. You have a wide variety of helpful milk. You now have non-genetically modified organic oat milk. You also have coconut milk. Which one is that? Peas? Pea milk. I don't know that one, but I know this soy milk, the organic soy milk. you have to be careful with soy, because soy, being a powerful food, has been genetically modified to the tune of about 95% in this country. In our country, in Jamaica, I would get my soy stuff from the Rastas, because they spend time to seek out their organic farmers in the US and Europe, and they would import their organic soybeans. They will do the processing themselves, and they spend time to ensure that it is not chemicalized what comes out. So I trusted them above the major importers of soy products. So we want to look for non-GMO, organically grown soy. So it must say non-GMO organic. The Non-GMO Project is a not-for-profit organization which tries to create a buffer and try to maintain the standards between those who are for-profit, who don't care about our health, and you and I. So there's also cashew milk. Yes. So, and these things are easy to make. 1 cup of almond can make 1 or 2 quarts of almond milk by just soaking it overnight. Then after a couple of hours, it gets nice and fluffy. You use your fingers to blanch off the brown outer coating. Throw away that first water, and the clean, pretty almond you put in a food processor or a powerful blender, and add some water in it. Blend it right out. You can strain it if you want. And add a little vanilla, a little bit of honey, and put it on the fridge. When you drink that, that's a nice, delicious almond milk. Homemade. Right? So, let's get back to diabetes. So who is at risk for diabetes? When we become 35 years old, our metabolic rate drops about 50%. And when we get into our 60s, the metabolic rate that we would have in our 30s is just about 30%. Unfortunately, when we're above 35, we tend to have more money. And meat eating is one of the standards of affluence. We tend to eat a little more meat when we get, because by then, we are more settled in our careers, we're earning more, and so forth. But it should actually be in the reverse. We should be eating less protein, animal protein, the older we get. Right? Here, when we become 45 plus, we're at significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes. If we're physically active less than 3 times per week, if we don't exercise, that's also another risk factor. A family history of type 2 diabetes is also a risk factor. If we have high blood pressure, because we will be damaging the kidneys with that high blood pressure, especially if it's not controlled. And when the kidney nephrons are damaged, they cannot effectively filter out that excess glucose to help the body. Right? History of gestational diabetes, or if we're overweight. If we're overweight. Obesity and overweight is a serious thing in this country. Among the Asian population is doing much better than everybody else. Our Latino and black women are well above 50% in overweight. Caucasians are tracking behind at about 36%. And the trend is going north. Right? Yes, sister. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Definitely. I do, and that is also getting us into seminar 2. But the caffeine is a bad boy. And there are 3 primary chemicals outside of the caffeine itself that coffee adds to the body that leads to toxicity. We will also discuss the carobs, which is a beautiful alternative for coffee. And it has carob, St. John's bread. When the Bible talks about John the Baptist in the wilderness and his diet was locust and honey, the locust bean is where the carob comes from. And nutritional research indicates the locust bean has a pH value of 10.7, whereas coffee has a pH of below 7, which means it's acidic, right? So we'll go into that in the next. If I give you everything here, you won't come back to seminar 2. And it's progressive information, right? Yes. So it's a 3-part series to go through the diabetic seminar. We can't discuss everything in 2 hours, right? So I'm being preempted all the time by Sister Marietta. So I'm jumping into some of the things that will come in the other seminar. When is that? Yeah, so I'll let the church know once we agree on the date. So more than likely it will be 2 other Sundays, right? Because Pastor Buddy and the leadership here wants us to focus on diabetes for the rest of the year because it's such a prevalent condition and it is out of control. And God's people should have the advantage. I certainly believe that. So we're trying to give God's people the advantage. Did you know that African Americans, Hispanic, American Indians, and Alaska Natives, Pacific Islanders, and some Asian Americans are at higher risk for diabetes than Caucasians? That's it. As to why we're at a higher risk? I think, my best guess, I haven't done any detailed research as to what is the genetic difference, but my best guess is the dairy consumption issue, right? Dairy predisposes anyone to diabetes, osteoporosis, leukemia, different challenges. My best guess would be that it would be the dairy consumption rate. Yeah, but by genetics, they inherit a constitution that deals with the casein and the sugar, the lactose in milk, in dairy, better than everyone else. In time, I'll show you the whole list of the absorption rate of the protein and the sugar by, it will be very interesting. Yeah. You'll see that us black folks, the Indians, and the Latinos are way down below. We would do very well to stay away from dairy. All right. Or do you enrich it with vitamin B12? I would say you get a natural B12 supplement. Don't think about enriching it with the enrichment with B12 in food products. They tend to use the synthetic form of B12, cyanocobalamin. So it's enriched with a little bit of cyanide, right? Yeah, it's give you a little bit of poison and say it's permissible levels. It's in baby food as well. You want to get the methylcobalamin, which is the natural B12. And you get that from your natural foods, your nuts. Some nuts will help the body to make the B12. A good variety of vegetarian foods will cause the B12 to be made in your mouth or in your gut. If you're running low on B12, get a nice liquid multivitamin with the methylcobalamin form of B12, not the cyanocobalamin. So out of this seminar, you will learn to read your labels. Read your labels. What you don't know will hurt you. In the past, we used to say what you don't know won't hurt you. But what we're realizing now is that the biggest casualty of development is the human constitution. That's what we're learning. Let's take a quick look at some statistics from the CDC. It's showing that obesity in our children is up significantly. And this is looking at 2015 to 2016. Diabetes is up tenfold in 10 years in our children. Less than 25% of children currently exercise. You're always on the phone or the TV. We were chased out of the house when we were growing. Go play, get out of the bed, get something done and then go. We don't want to see you until dinner time, right? And we did very, very well. We get over a cold in a few days. Now, when children have cold, they have it for weeks, right? Something is wrong. So we should give our children what we got and stop saying we're going to give them what we didn't get, right? What we got was good because we are carrying on. We're healthy, we're happy. We are the designers of the technology and everything that is being used today. The millennials are not designing anything. They are consumers of what we have designed, right? And if we continue on the same path, spoiling them, unfortunately, we'll have to cry for them, according to the researchers. They are not expected to outlive their parents. That's what the research is saying. Our children are a part of an experiment, and we have to break the cycle. God's people must think peculiarly. We must be peculiar. This is showing us that, let's look at the overall. 12 to 19 years, 20.6% of our children are obese. 6 to 11, 18.4% are obese. 2 to 5, 13.9%. And obesity in children predicts obesity in adults. And it also puts them at risk for early mortality in their 30s because of serious disease. So we put them at risk when we overfeed them. You know, God did make provision for feasting, but we shouldn't feast too often. Feasting was far apart, right? By ethnicity, this is where it gets interesting. I'm sorry, this is not pointing. Yeah, my pointer's in my bag. Okay. Non-Hispanic white means Caucasian. Non-Hispanic black means black people. Non-Hispanic Asian means Asian folks. And Hispanic is Latinos. Our women are off the charts with 54.8%, and the Hispanic is trailing behind at 50.6%. The Caucasian women, 38%, and the Asian women, 14.8%. Our men, (43.1%). So the Hispanic men they've overtaken the black men in obesity. Black men, 36.9%. White men, 37.9%. And the Asians are 10.1%. These are startling figures because obesity predicts depression. And when one is depressed, they lose control of their will. And once you lose control of your will, it's very hard to overcome any disease because you will lose control and not pay attention to exercise or eating healthy. Not pay attention to even going to your physician to keep a check on your system. And that mental issue is probably even more dangerous than the resultant disease that you will have. Yes. What level of glucose start affecting the brain in diabetic people? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll research it and have it for the next seminar. But so the brain will be the first organ affected because it consumes 20%, 20 to 25% of the glucose passing through the blood, right? So it will be the first organ crying out when the high insulin drops the glucose level below the rest area, about 70 milligram per deciliter, and it will be screaming out. So rest is about 70 milligram per deciliter. So maybe that is the answer, but I'll do some more research and come back with it. Let's look at obesity by income. Low income, which is less than 15,000 per annum, has the highest rates of obesity. Is it that they cook the food nicer? No, it's poor food choices. Very poor food choices. Instead of buying a pound of beans, the poor person will buy a pound of chicken. And the pound of chicken can only serve one person because 40% of it is fat, bones, and water. While when you cook a pound of beans, that can serve 4 to 6 persons. Right? So intelligent food choices may not be made in the group of low income. Yes. Yes, so the poor. Yes. Yes. That's a very good observation. So high starch consumers you'll find in the low income bracket because they try to use the starch to compensate for everything else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So sugary drinks and pastries, we would do well to push them aside. And then by income bracket is how the rate of obesity decreases. So the higher the income, the lower the rate of obesity. Education as well, because there's a big group, data not reported, that blue group down the bottom, that is as high as the higher income bracket. And that indicates that education is the key. For example, if you spread in this community that is a diabetic seminar, and you go to an upper middle class community and say there's a diabetic seminar, you could probably compare the attendance. So you may find a higher attendance of the middle to upper class coming to, once it's in a nice setting, once they're not afraid to, they will come out. Because that's what we have found in Jamaica, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Yes. Mhm. 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 Yes. Yes. Mhm. The walking still helps, but there may be other intervention that you need. It's a nutritional deficiency also. Yes. Yeah. It's more injurious than eating meat. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. All right. So that's something we will have to discuss outside of this forum. But one of the things that happened is that the decision to take drugs was made by you and your physician. As a naturopath, I have to tell you that you have to maintain that relationship, but you have to ask your doctor to help you. If I put you on a program, to help you, because some doctors are not interested in you coming off medication. If you find a closed-minded doctor, that's an indication that you need to change and go to another one. But we can discuss a couple of things. And as a medical technologist, one of the things that I've learned in my research is that medical technologists, being around all the radiation, their lifespan is actually shortened by about 7 to 8 years. So the radiation could have also have an impact on your pancreas if you had inherited a weak pancreas or weak liver from your parents, for example. That would be the first area that would be impacted. But it's something we could discuss because we could also use our bioresonance machine at the clinic to check, what is happening, what else is happening in your body. We can discuss that outside of this forum. All right? Yes. Yes.
But as I look at our church, there's many people that are obese
Mm-hmm.
and probably diabetic or people,
Yes.
yet nobody's here. And
Yeah.
so I'm taking the assumption that most people do not want to change their lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the pattern or lifestyle includes high-stress jobs. And this is not strange to me, but you find that people are using the Sunday sometimes to prepare for the high-stress week ahead. It's an investment when you take the time to be at seminars like these, because what you learn will stay with you forever. So you're very right that I don't know the emphasis that was placed in the church either. I know that the vision and the thrust of the leaders here, they're excited about these seminars, but the thrust also will come from you who are here at the first presentation. Yes, sister.
I have to ask what came first, the chicken and egg. A lot of stress is caused by their dietary habits.
Yes.
So it's that catch-22 situation. If they're eating the wrong things, they're going to have high stress.
Yes. It is a vicious cycle. They have to be educated. Exactly. You hit it right on the head. And you're very right. I think I've gone through this slide by my presentation earlier on the graph, right? Just talking about the prevalence of obesity being 39.8% overall, right? But we had broken down the numbers to show how that breaks out by the ethnicity. So go to the next slide. That's where the trend is. So 1999 to 2000, adults were 30.5% obese. Now it's almost 40% overall. Obesity predicts also colon cancer. And we see the rise in colon cancer in this country. Right? And the youth is going up. 13.9% is now at 18.5% and counting. All right, let's have some fun. You've been very good students. Who would want to calculate their health age? Who would want to know how truly young they are? There are 7 factors that science has lifted up, still used today for longevity. Seven factors science have lifted up for longevity. Sleeping 7 to 8 hours. That's number 1. Got it? Okay, you're welcome. No eating between meals. Eating breakfast regularly. Every good weight loss program requires regular breakfast consumption. Today we skip breakfast for so many different reasons. And skipping breakfast regularly puts us on a collision course for heart disease or heart attack. Maintaining proper weight. I need to lose some myself. So I'm on the journey. Regular exercise. Moderate or no use of alcohol and no smoking. Yes, sister? Yes. Okay. So intermittent fasting is just choosing that block of time in the day in which you eat. So you could take your breakfast and from your breakfast time to probably about midday is your eating period. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's your choice. So you can, once you do it between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., so you could choose 2 to 6, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., or 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You could choose your 4 or 6 hour blocks. Yes, because intermittent fasting shouldn't be perpetual. Shouldn't be permanent. It's something you do permanently. It should be something you do periodically, right? You teach the body to be disciplined. So it knows that, okay, this month I'm going to get food between these hours for at least 2 or 3 weeks, right? And you get a benefit. So you can dynamically select your block of time, right? And just be disciplined with it. All right. Intermittent fasting is just blocking out a few hours per day. So you have 24 hours in the day, right? Normally we would start eating from about 7 o'clock, and we stop eating probably about 8 o'clock in the night, some people, right? So your stomach rests from, well, it's not resting from 8. It's resting probably 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours after you've eaten your last meal, until that time when you wake up again in the morning and you go at 7 o'clock to eat again. So that's a very short window. So let's say you stop eating at 8, your stomach starts resting at 11 or 12, and you start eating again at 7. So that's only a 7 to 8 hour window of rest on the digestive organs. Intermittent fasting is resting those organs for at least, you can go 15, 16, 17, 18 hours. So you select a block of 4 or 6 hours. So if you start eating at 7 a.m., you stop eating at between 11 and 1 p.m., 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. So your stomach, your body rests. Digestion is a high energy activity. And when you eat and eat too frequently, the brain loses energy which has to be concentrated in the stomach and the digestive organs for digestion. It's one of the reasons why the scholastic performance of our youngsters are falling, because they eat too much and they're eating at multiple hours during the day, right? So scholastic performance falls. Yes, there is. So eating between meals is snacking. Snacking. And there are two primary enzymes, leptin and ghrelin, that if you snack, the body does not produce these enzymes, which tells the body to go into the mode of fat burning, because it's always going to be getting glucose, it's always going to be getting sugar. So it doesn't have to go into your glycogen stores or your fat stores to start burning the fat. And you want to burn some of that excess energy, because that's where the visceral fat comes from in the belly. Right? That's why we have people wearing the belly on the thigh today, because they keep eating. And the body never gets into. The body is powerfully made. It is a hybrid engine. It can burn either glucose or calories. But we have to learn how to make the body go into that hybrid mode. Yes, sister? Yes. Yes. Exactly. As long as you can. Thank you for that, sister. That's a very, very good explanation. So, extending your fast for as long as you can. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yes. So there's more satiety in eating these good fats, right? Because the body. Exactly. Is that clear, sir? Doc? Good. All right. So let's calculate our health age. If you are 50 years old and you practice 0 to 2 of those habits, add 22 years to your age. Isn't that scary? If you are 50 years old and you practice 5 of those habits, you are still 50 years old. But if you practice all 7, you have the health age of a 36-year-old. Now, I want to give you some good news. At every stage, at any stage of life, we start to incorporate good health choices, lifestyle choices. There is a benefit. Let me say that again. At any age you start to incorporate good lifestyle practices, there is a benefit. It's best to start when you're young, but if you start when you're 50 or 60, by the very design that God has put in our physiology, we will get a benefit. And that's good news. That's tremendous. Right? If you are 40-year-old and you practice 0 to 2, you have the health age of a 60-year-old. That's what science have found. Now, let's consider this. If you're 40 and you practice 7 habits, you have the health age of a 27-year-old. Agile, you can outrun the youngsters on the football field, my brother. Right? You can outrun them. This is quite interesting. But if you look at these factors, they all are gobbled up into God's 8 natural health laws. Don't it? The scientists don't have trust in God. They don't have temperance on this. So you can imagine if we practice these, and we who are God's people, who trust God, and will incorporate temperance, you can imagine that we would have a better health age than even what is reported on the table. It's amazing. But that's desirable. That's what we can get if we're obedient. Let's run through quickly. This one is showing us from the same research the mortality risk related to sleep, exercise, and smoking. Exercise is the primary one that I wanted to look at. Low physical activity in men increases his early mortality risk by 50%. But in women, it increases it by 120%. Doc, it's very good to take your wife on the exercise trail. Says, you're doing a very good job. Very good job. So our women should exercise even more than the men. Men exercise actually boosts testosterone, so we should keep exercising. So it's not telling you not to exercise. But our women needs as much exercise as the men. Our women with low physical activity has a higher early mortality risk than even women who smoke. So women who smoke have a lower early mortality risk, this is what the research is showing, than those that don't exercise. In men, it's the opposite. So the men who smoke have a higher mortality risk, right, than those who do not exercise. He's physically stronger. He has more spare muscles, more spare. It's quite interesting. I probably skip this one. These are some of the excuses people give for skipping breakfast. Fear of overweight, lack of knowledge of good nutritional practices, not hungry in the morning, or no time, or alone and no one to prepare. So those are some of the excuses. So I'll leave that one. Eating breakfast reduces the risk of heart attacks. I mentioned earlier that missing breakfast regularly increases your risk of heart attacks in the morning. The increase is 150% increase in the risk of heart attack. So that's when you miss breakfast regularly, right? Well, what they're saying is that the clot-forming potential in the early waking hours, the first 2.5 hours, is higher. So when you eat breakfast, it actually gets, the energy, the digestion process actually is also reducing the potential for clot forming. That's basically what the researchers are saying. So, it's questionable to you?
Well, because I've been practicing breakfast either focused on
Yeah? What time do you eat breakfast?
I usually sometimes wait until the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
or, early, late
Mm-hmm.
morning. I don't always eat very well. So,
Well, maybe you've inherited very good constitution. There was a time in my professional life when I used to miss breakfast regularly, and I did have angina issues. I did have them. And I was a company striker for a few years. And when those issues started, after 10 minutes, I have to come off the football field. And it's not until I learned that it's missing breakfast and also eating the jerk chicken regularly, right? I was toxifying my body. But when I started to eat breakfast regularly, there was a change. I used to eat my jerk chicken. Yeah. Right? But the missing of the breakfast regularly was a problem. Right? Yeah? Mm-hmm. You feel nauseous? Okay. What do you take for breakfast? High sugar, cereals, and so forth? Oh, very good. Because if it's high sugar for breakfast, you'll have a hyperglycemic reaction, right? Let me skip this one. So depending on what you eat, this is looking at the effect of food processing on our blood glucose level. So if your blood glucose is falling too fast after your breakfast, it depends on whether your breakfast is loaded with simple sugar stuff, processed food. If it's complex carbohydrates, which is food in its more natural state, you'll have energy for longer. And this is demonstrated in this slide, where we're looking at consuming an apple or its processed derivatives of the applesauce or the apple juice. So let's explain this slide. This slide shows, so the red line is the apple juice. So you start in the morning, your blood glucose level is at about 70 milligrams per deciliter. That's the rest. After about 30 minutes of drinking the apple juice, it spikes to about 90. And then insulin is released. It falls below rest, which is not good, because the brain is now going to be starved. And after 180 minutes, it's still not at rest. So between that time, your brain will be sending signals to say, eat something else, I need some more sugar. Because it doesn't expect that your blood sugar level will be below rest. The applesauce has a slightly better profile, but after 3 hours, your blood sugar level is still not at rest. But let's look at the natural whole apple. Blood sugar level spikes are on the same level. You have energy for longer because you have that little crossbar. Insulin is released, so blood sugar comes down to just about rest or just below rest. And after 3 hours, it is round about rest. So this is telling us that eating the natural foods is much better than its processed derivative. So our children, instead of giving them these cocktails, we give them the fruit. Give them the fruit. You'll be better off. Let me just, does that answer your question? So you have to watch the kind of starch that is in your breakfast. Right? Yeah. You have a point? His hand was up first. Let me get him and then I'll get you. Yeah. Yes, my brother. Well, I want to teach you the principle and then you make the choice. But a good breakfast is like your vegetables and your complex carbohydrates. It's a good breakfast. Or a whole grain organic cereal and your nut milks. And you can add your pumpkin seeds and your almonds or so to it. Right? Those are good breakfasts. Right? Vegetables constitute good food, especially for the diabetic. In seminar number 2 and 3, we will recognize that vegetables are key to conquering diabetes. Right? Yes, sir. You like salt? You eat it with salt. Okay. So salt is very good, but it's a bad boy too much salt hardens the arteries and puts you at risk, higher risk for a stroke or heart attack. So if you're diabetic, your salt consumption should drop from 1 teaspoon per day, which is 5,000 milligrams, to about a quarter teaspoon per day. So here you've learned the principle. All right. Yes. So if you're constantly feeling hungry, it's, so you want to, and this is after she's eaten her meals. This is after you've eaten your meal. An hour or two? Yeah. So again, it also depends on the type of starch that you put in. Right? It also depends on what you eat after you're feeling that. So if you want to try and avoid that hyperglycemia, you have to ensure that you're eating high fiber foods. The secret to the rate at which sugar is released in the bloodstream is fiber. So fiber holds on to sugar and slow releases it into the bloodstream. So that's why if you're feeling hungry an hour or two after your meal, it's better to get probably an apple, an organic apple. It's fibrous, right? Yes, sister?
I was under the impression that you carbohydrate first.
Mhm.
That's where the problem comes in at. Say a cereal and an extra high carbohydrate, high glucose.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas opposed to eating a fat, say an avocado or nuts
Yes.
first.
Yes.
That's the one that satiates the appetite.
Yes. So, very good point. Because you will get 2.5 times the energy from eating the good fats than even from the glucose. Fats provide more energy than the simple glucose. So if you have the good fats like your nuts, your avocado, your flaxseed meal in your porridge, you have that first, then that will keep you more satisfied because the body will have enough energy and don't have that need for the glucose as high as it currently has it today. So you want to get in more of your nuts and seeds and your avocado and so forth in your diet first. If you like avocado, right? Coconut. Coconut is also a good one. Yeah, coconut. Yeah. Yeah, I follow. Fresh coconut, the jelly from the coconut is good food. Right? It's fat that does not stress the liver for digestion. And it's fat that will give you satiety. You'll be satisfied. Yeah. On the screen, you're looking at the daily chemical warfare that takes place. This takes place autonomically. Right? It takes place unknowing to you. So what you're looking at is how a white blood cell attacks and kills a bacteria or any other pathogen that enters your body, your bloodstream. It could be the flu virus. First stage, the binding stage, it attaches itself, it tracks down, attaches itself to the bacteria and pulls in that bacteria into itself and generate, by stage 3, certain chemicals like hydrogen peroxide and so forth to neutralize that bacteria. When we take the sugars in, that process is now significantly weakened. So, 0 teaspoons of sugar, 1 bacteria, track down, destroys, one good bacteria tracks down and destroys 14. One white blood cell, tracks down and destroys 14 bacteria. That's the capacity that he has. Powerful capacity. At 6 teaspoons of sugar, which is about what the kidneys can deal with in a day, that white blood cell now has the capacity to deal with 10 bacteria. Still fairly good, still not too bad. When you double that, the rate of destruction, the balance now switches to give the advantage to the pathogen just by increasing your sugar consumption to above that level with which the kidneys can effectively deal within a day. So you are now at about, if you can do the math, you're about 60% deficiency in your white blood cell capacity to destroy pathogens on 12 teaspoons of sugar. But the average is above 12 teaspoons of sugar in a day. So it means that our immune systems are significantly weakened just by our sugar consumption, which is the average is about 18. By 18, one white blood cell only has the capacity to deal with 2 bacteria. That's disastrous on the body. That's disastrous. When you reach 24, it's 1-to-1. Let's look at some of the hidden sugars in food. And this is where we have one more slide after this and then we'll stop here. Hidden sugars in foods by teaspoons. So malted milk, 42 teaspoons of sugar in a 12-ounce malted milk. Means that your white blood cells will they don't know where to go. Yeah, the bacteria beats him up and sends him back where he's coming from because you have weakened the immune system by the amount of sugar that you have placed in the system. Soft drinks, a 12-ounce, has 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. Our youngsters are drinking 2 of this per day. Easily. Canned fruit, light syrup. This is light syrup. 1 serving has 8 teaspoons of sugar. Chocolate cake, a 4-ounce slice. Our women eat 2 slices of chocolate cake. They don't eat 1. 1 is not satisfying. Right? So 1 slice has 8 teaspoons of sugar. When you are 2 slices, you're above 16. Chocolate candy, just 1 ounce has 7. We had to tell our school principal not to give our children any candy. We will give candy to our children if, we will space it out. It has to be a reward and it has to be a fruit-based candy, not these sugar-laden candies. Right? Fruit pie, 1 slice, 7 ounces. A donut, 1 donut, 4 teaspoons of sugar. Right? So there are hidden sugars, everything. Do you know that prior to the turn of the 18th century, before milling began, sugar was not available to the poor? And all the chronic diseases that exist today was considered the rich man's disease? Yeah. It was considered the rich man's disease. And the rich wouldn't share it either. They would say, well, this is my sugar. It's too sweet for you. So I keep all the disease. We didn't. The poor didn't realize. But then milling took place. And we will also see that bowel disorders and these conditions never existed before milling started. So the grain used to supply the starch, the fatty acid in the germ, and the vitamin E, and it would also supply the bran for the fiber to sweep the colon. But now milling came, and that one grain now serves 3 industries. So the endosperm becomes the white flour. The bran is separated and added to the breads, as high brand bread or cakes. And then the germ is extracted and scraped off and put in our shampoos and creams, right? And we should be getting all of that in the grain. So we are giving the grain to the animals and getting the protein secondhand. The animals are doing much better. In fact, they wouldn't die unless we kill them. They will live out until their old age, right? Yes, sister. And the grain is also... Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's more bulky and round instead of... So the constitution has changed, and that's hybridization. And the hybridized grain, seminar number 2. It will be interesting. Here are some cancers that are linked to sugar consumption. Colon cancer, rectal cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, and cancer of the nervous system. Many times the nutritional link is missed even by the professionals. As the clients and patients, you shouldn't miss the nutritional link. We shouldn't. And the more educated we are, the better our decisions can be. This is where we end today. If there's no other questions, any other questions? Yeah, we will look at caffeine, the caffeine link. Caffeine is a bad boy. It's disastrous on the nervous system, and it gives a short-term boost in energy, but it drops you like a bomb. In terms of the amount of